Welcome to today's session. My name is Kim Snowball, and I will be your facilitator today. So let's get started. So now, before you begin, grab a pencil and have your teaching or training guide next to you or something to write on, because there will be 3 embedded code phrases in this training. You'll need to write them down, and then at the end of the training guide, you will see a bit.ly or a link to where the code phrases need to be put in. And then that will then send you via email your certificate for participation. Make sure that you put your email in correctly, because that is the number one error when people do not get their certificate within that 24-hour period. So your email, check and double check. Co-teaching. It's been around for over 30 years, but still we have lots to learn. There are many resources that you'll find within the participant guide that you will be able to use later after the session is over. So make sure that you have taken the time to print out or save onto your computer so you can utilize these resources. John O'Connor says it best when he said in his book, Great Instruction and Great Achievement, that when you walk into a classroom and there are 2 teachers within that classroom, that you should see small group instruction routinely, that 2 teachers should be actively engaged with students in an instructional activity, that we're leading the small group. There cannot be other things going on. There could be small independent work, but what we're looking for in a co-teaching classroom is that the teachers are working with students. Now, they may be working in station teaching or parallel teaching, alternative teaching, or teaming. The other 2 that are available in the co-teaching model are, in fact, 1 teach, 1 assist, and 1 teach and 1 observe. Both of those are definitely the least effective. So if we can embed one of these 4 within the actual co-teaching model, we're ahead of the game. But we have to do it with intentionality. Dr. Marilyn Friend, who is an expert in the field of co-teaching, has a short little video clip where she describes some of the common co-teaching challenges, but it's both from the perspective of the teacher as well as the administrators. So let's take a few minutes just to listen to her.
Well, we were with Dr. Marilyn Friend, and she is a CEC past president. Welcome.
Thank you.
So you specialize in co-teaching. Could you first let us know what are some challenges in co-teaching?
Co-teaching has been around for 30 years now. And at the beginning, it had such intuitive appeal. What could be challenging about a general ed teacher and a special ed teacher sharing a classroom and making sure they address student needs? And we've all learned over those years that it's really a lot more than that. And a number of challenges have arisen. For example, probably the first one, and that makes or breaks many programs, is administrative understanding. Because if school administrators don't deeply understand what co-teaching requires and how it's done effectively, it's not sustainable. In addition, there are very practical matters. The most common concern about co-teaching isn't really about what goes on in the classroom. It's about the need for common planning time. And while electronic options certainly are driving a new way to plan for co-teaching, many teachers still find that they have almost no planning time, and that makes it very difficult to do this. Now, there are all kinds of other challenges, of course, professional development and making sure that classrooms are set up correctly. But if we could work with having administrators understand, and if we could make sure teachers could work together away from the children, I think we'd be in much better shape.
Sure. So that all being said, then what are some strategies for effective co-teaching?
Yeah. And that's the companion, of course,
Yes.
to the first question. And when I think about co-teaching, I would say that there are a number of critical components. And the complexity is that those components are interlocking, but they're also all always moving. The first one is that teachers need to have an understanding of their roles and responsibilities. General ed teachers are responsible for the general curriculum. Special educators are responsible for the special ed students and the services that they need. That has to be in place. Second, there are 6 fundamental co-teaching approaches that most people know now. Unfortunately, sometimes in a classroom, what teachers know and what's implemented are not the same thing. And too often now, co-teaching is one teach, one assist, which is inappropriate.
Code phrase number 1, the least effective co-teaching model is the one teach, one assist.
A third piece is just classroom logistics. How do you have students in small groups with 2 teachers and move them efficiently? That also is an issue. And then the most important one is the instruction that goes on that classroom. Because if students with disabilities don't receive specially designed instruction, they're not getting what they're supposed to get.
So why is it important for teachers to be able to co-teach?
Well, the promise of co-teaching is really about a dual goal. The first part of the goal is to provide students with disabilities meaningful access to the general curriculum in the preferred least restrictive environment, which is with their peers. The simultaneous goal is that they will receive while there the specially designed instruction to which they are entitled.
And so why is it overall better for the teachers and the students?
Yeah. For the students, we know that while co-teaching, I think, should be implemented more with children with high needs, students with disabilities, nearly all of them are capable of learning the same curriculum if they receive the right type of specialized instruction. And so for students, if co-teaching is implemented with fidelity, students have a great potential to really achieve the standards that are expected in today's schools and to really have that success. For teachers, this is a reflection of the real world in the 21st century. Most people now work on teams. We know the problems are too complex. No one person can possibly know all the answers. And so co-teaching is also an opportunity for collaboration where teachers put their heads together, and it's a very supported feeling. And many teachers say that they're better teachers because they've co-taught.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Friend, so much for sharing with us the benefits and the challenges of co-teaching.
Glad to do so.
Now, in that little under 5-minute video clip, there was quite a bit of information that she highlights, and we're just going to take some of it and dive a little deeper. For us to start thinking about our own current practices in co-teaching and how we support specially designed instruction within that co-taught setting, we need to step back and ask ourselves, are there gaps in our current co-teaching model, or are we beginning a co-teaching model? And we need to make sure that if you expect it, let's pre-correct it, as Dr. Archer always says. So now that you've had some time to reflect on your current practices, the readiness levels that you bring to the table when you think of co-teaching, we want to focus on making sure we know what co-teaching is in a nutshell and what co-teaching is not. So remember, co-teaching definitely is a joint responsibility for the planning and the instruction, the delivery, as well as the classroom management. It also can be a component of the continuum of services within the IEP. So for students with disabilities, this may be the structure that you have implemented to support their unique needs. As an administrator, carefully matching the teachers that are teaming together is an important component so that all students have success. Another big component is that both professionals are present in the class every day. Both professionals planning the lesson to meet all the needs of the learner is a big piece. And finally, both professionals are responsible for all students. It's not your students, not just my students. It is not one teacher maintains all the planning and the instruction, or having these small classes within a class. That leads to these are your students, these are my students, and we don't mix. So keeping in mind that it's all students and that everyone can learn from different types of specially designed instruction that is brought two professionals providing instruction to one homogeneous group of students is not co-teaching. Teachers also need to make sure that they are respecting each other's special skill sets that they bring to the table. So this is not an extra set of hands that are in the classroom. It is not a paraprofessional and a teacher role, but these are two teachers that have two unique sets of skills. One large misconception within students' minds is that we have one teacher and one paraprofessional. In fact, we have two certified teachers. And then finally, a special educator working only with students with disabilities. Again, that leads to that. These are your students, these are my students. So when we go back to what coaching is, I want to make sure that we focus on this. So I put a green star here, that as administrators, that we are thinking through setting them up for success and intentionally pairing up the professionals who are going to make up that co-teaching team. So they need to be in there 100% vested in and see the benefits. And so planning together, having professional development together is a key piece. Now, the other one that I put 2 stars on, now the other one that I put 2 stars on are, now the other one that I put 2 stars on, that both professionals are present in class every day. And so in the old days, it used to be they were pulled out for meetings with parents. They were pulled out for meetings for IEPs. They are pulled out to cover classrooms for substitute teachers. And so when we think about their role in the classroom, we cannot sacrifice the time they are working with students to meet the needs of other obligations within the classroom. There's only a limited time that teachers are working with students, and we have to protect that. Roles and responsibilities for specially designed instruction. That was another piece that Dr. Marilyn Friend talked about. And so we're going to take some time, just do a little activity. I want you to jot down on a scrap piece of paper what you believe are the roles and responsibilities for the general education teacher, as well as what are the roles and responsibilities for special education teacher. So just a bulleted list. Jot down a few thoughts, hit pause, and we'll come back. So now that you're back, think about what Dr. Marilyn Friend says, that general education teachers' role and responsibility with respect to specially designed instruction is to support it after the initial delivery by the special education teacher. It is not to deliver the specially designed instruction at the onset, but to support it after the initial delivery. We may also take the time to replicate and extend the specially designed instruction for other targeted skills and behavior, but that again is after the initial delivery. So macro planning and weekly lesson plans shared with a special education teacher is one of the big roles and responsibilities for a general education teacher. They're doing this big planning unit ahead of time in the macro planning, and we'll talk about that a little deeper later. We'll give an example, so that the special education teacher can develop a plan. So this macro planning and these weekly lesson plans are imperative. And keep in mind that in most states, the general education teacher is not responsible for delivering the SDI, but who is? So let's look at a special education teacher's role. Special education teachers in the general education setting need to remember they are there first not to be another general education teacher, but they are there to deliver the specially designed instruction. That is their primary role.
Number 2, special education teachers' primary role is to deliver SDI, that specially designed instruction.
That is why we have special education teachers in that general education setting, is so that the specially designed instruction is in fact being implemented. It is a service, not a place. So this is a very specific set of roles and responsibilities. And I think Dr. Marilyn Friend is very, very intentional when she talks about why we have these two teachers working together and how if we both know what your role is, then we can move forward in planning and implementing. So we're talking about specially designed instruction. What does it really look like in this general education setting? And so Dr. Marilyn Friend says it should be something you can see or hear. It's a service, remember, it's not the place. So let's just take some time and look at some examples. If I walk into a classroom, maybe I might see the special education teacher teaching a learning strategy to a student or a group of students. I might actually see a special education teacher supporting a self-regulation strategy. I might see both the teachers, the general education teacher with the special education teacher, teaching a replacement behavior for a student with a behavior plan. But what I do know is that it's been strategically designed, intentionally and carefully designed so that students with disabilities can get what they need. Their unique needs are met and data is collected. So let's go back to macro planning. Macro planning is part of the general education teacher's roles and responsibilities. As special education teachers and general education teachers need to be on the same page. What appropriate SDIs would work for the students that are in the classroom during that unit? So we need to be incorporating them into our lessons, having discussions on how we're collecting the data, and all this needs to be part of the macro planning.
Code phrase number 3, planning is essential. Start with macro planning.
There is a unit planning template that has become a good guide for special education teachers to understand what the big ideas are, be able to analyze difficulties, create strategies and supports, and then evaluate the effectiveness of it. And it's called the BASE model. Here's an example of the BASE model for a middle school math unit. And so this has been included in your the participant guide as well as a handout. So it is a powerful way for us to think through what are these big ideas for this particular unit, tightly aligned to the Kentucky academic standards that students must master. Then, what difficulties do you anticipate? Go back to Dr. Archer. If you expect it, pre-correct it. Let's think through this ahead of implementing. What learning strategies? This is where our strategy specialists, our special education teachers will be at the forefront. Having this conversation with our content specialists is imperative during the strategies and support development. And then look back through and say, is in fact this working? Analyze the areas of difficulty and have we actually met the needs of the students? So BASE, big ideas, analyze difficulties, strategies and supports, and evaluation is a way for us to do some macro planning. So let's take a look at the weekly lesson plans. These are that where we get down to the nitty gritty. What specially designed instruction is actually going to be happening that week, that particular day, as well as the co-teaching model. Which one are we using? And that we're both, the special education teacher and the general education teacher, are on the same page. Nobody's winging it. It's intentionally planned. So one of the other resources that I've included in that participant guide is this particular Excel spreadsheet, weekly lesson plans that many people use today. And you do not have to use this one, but what I want to pay close attention to is these two additions to the lesson plan. Do your teachers actually that live in a co-teaching model, do they have it in their lesson plans? Which approach are they going to actually use for each lesson? Do they have it listed, the specially designed instruction that is going to happen so that when a general education teacher is working with a group of students, and a special education teacher is working with a group of students, we know exactly the specially designed instruction that is going on. Is it initially being implemented, or are they both utilizing it to support other students as well? Now, we're going to go back to those two other models that we had listed. The very first one is one teach, one observe, that's listed here, and the very last one is one teach and one assist. So what I'd like to do is take the last one out of the mix. Dr. Marilyn Friend says that this really is ineffective. I can see maybe where if there is someone sick from the co-teaching team, they've had to leave for an unexpected reason, and so there's been no time to prep. We might have a one teach, one assist, but for the most part, that should not even be part of the choices. The other one actually does have some role in the actual co-teaching environment is when you are collecting data. So you might have one teach and one observe where they are literally taking data on students. So if in fact questions arise like, what SDI are you or your collaborating teacher using? You will have the answers, both of you. You might be asked, which IEP goals or learning characteristics is the SDI addressing? If you've had those macro planning discussions, you know there are these goals that are intentionally being targeted through SDI. How effective is your SDI currently being implemented? You're collecting data, you're sharing that information. How's it being documented? Through the lesson plans, and there might be other progress monitoring tools that you're using, but the point is that you're having these discussions and all parties involved have some clarity. And finally, what evidence do you have that you are systematically delivering the SDI? You put this system in place. You've thought it through. You've gone through that inclusion checklist. And so you have answers to all these questions. Now, at the very end of your participant guide, there is a document that is called the Common Co-Teaching Challenges. It is actually something that was provided to us at the CEC conference in 2019. And when I first opened it up, I thought, ooh, this is a hefty document. But when I start paging through it, I realized there was so much valuable information. Within this document, there's a whole section on planning. There is actually a 60-minute co-planning protocol. Questions and thoughts about scheduling for administrators. We look at scheduling constraints that you need to be thinking through when you start planning the next school year. The other parts that are within this document is just thinking through the co-taught classroom composition. We've hit a lot about the co-teaching and specially designed instruction, so take some time to maybe go and reread that. There's areas about expertise in content areas, resistant teachers to co-teaching. Again, eliminating the one teach and one assist, because if you actually have that model going on, that's a comfort zone that they're used to. And how do we back away from it in a very respectful way so that we are now moving forward in our intentionality of utilizing the other four? So co-teaching, again, is two teachers working together with groups of students. We're sharing our space. They might be sharing the nameplate on the door. That's a big parity signal for many students to realize that there are two teachers, not one teacher, one paraeducator walking in the room, and that you're sharing this physical space as well as the instructional piece.
Thank you for participating in the Co-Teaching Planning for Success with SDI and SAS. We look forward to many, many years as you build a strong co-teaching model. Thank you.